Hi, welcome to another crochet tutorial with me, Laura, and today we're actually going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be looking at larger crochet stitches, so all the way from the tiny little slip stitch all the way up to yarning over 10 times and having a look at what they're called and how they differ in US and UK terminology. So we're all familiar with the slip stitch, so that's going to be the smallest stitch that we do after we chain. So we do a little slip stitch. And then the next stitch that comes along, you should be familiar with in US terminology, is the single crochet. And obviously I'm not going to be running through these basic stitches. If you're new to crochet, then do check out my beginner tutorial on these basic stitches and then coming back to this video. But in UK terminology, we call that a double crochet. And it's always been a little bit of a mystery as to why in UK terminology they skip the name single crochet. They both have exactly the same stitch in US and UK, but in US it's a single crochet, but in UK it's a double crochet. But the mystery of that might become more apparent when we get into larger stitches. So the next stitch after that, we do wrap the yarn around our hook one time, and it's the familiar half double crochet where we pull through all three. In UK terminology, that's a half treble. And then we know the next one as well, which is quite popular, the double crochet, or in UK terminology, the treble. So we pull through two, pull through two. And you may even be familiar with the treble, where we wrap the yarn around our hook twice. And in UK terminology, that's called a double treble. And whenever we work a double crochet or bigger, we just pull through two, pull through two, pull through two until we get to the end. So you might be familiar with that one. That has cropped up in my patterns quite a lot. And you may even be familiar with the stitch where you wrap the yarn around your hook 3 times. It's quite rare, but we do see it. And this one's actually called a double treble in US terminology. And in UK terminology, it's called a triple treble. And it follows the exact same format. Just go into the stitch and you pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So these stitches are really easy to remember. You just pull through 2 until you get to the end. But I think beyond that, we kind of don't really know or see very often much bigger stitches. So when we wrap the yarn around our hook 4 times, what do we call it? Well, in US terminology, we call it a triple treble crochet. And in UK terminology, that's called a quadruple treble. So you'll start to see that in UK terminology, quad obviously in Latin represent the unit of 4. We wrap the yarn around our hook 4 times. So the UK terminology tends to follow the Latin convention of numbers more than the US terminology, because in US terminology this is a triple treble, and obviously a triple means 3, so it's kind of like 1 behind. So you can sort of imagine it like it's got the triple with 3 and then +1 for that treble, so that's sort of a way of remembering it. But it's the same format for this one. We just go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2. You probably used to hear me saying this in tutorials. I think I'm famous for it now. The pull through 2 method. So there we go. That's what the stitch is for when you yarn over 4 times. So what is it called when we yarn over 5 times? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So now we're getting quite a lot of stitches, quite a lot of loops on our hook. And this stitch in US terminology is called a quadruple treble, because it's always 1 behind the UK. But in UK terminology, it's called a quintuple treble. Quintuple treble, so which obviously represents the number 5 in Latin. And it's exactly the same thing. We go into the stitch and we just pull through 2. Pull through 2 until we get to the end. But I've written an article up on my website, happyberry.co.uk, that has all this written down. So if you want to remind yourself of one particular size stitch and what it's called in either terminology, you can go check that out, and it should answer your questions. And then obviously we then wrap the yarn around our hook 6 times. So 3, 4, 5 and 6. So it's getting a bit crazy now. But in US terminology, this is called, obviously 1 behind the UK, is a quintuple treble. And in UK terminology, it's called a sextuple treble. So same format again, gets a little bit harder, but you're just pulling through 2, yarning over, pulling through 2 until you get to the end. Exactly the same format. You just do it more times. The stitches are slowly getting taller as we go along. So what are we up to now? So now we're going to wrap the yarn around our hook 7 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So this stitch, when we wrap the yarn around our hook 7 times, in US terminology it's obviously 1 behind, so it's a sextuple treble, but in UK terminology it's called a septuple treble, obviously representing the number 7, septuple treble. So it's the same thing again. Go into the stitch and we pull through 2 till we get to the end. And this is where you want quite a slippy hook, because get more friction with those loops on your hook. Here we go. So it's getting a little bit taller. And then we've got 3 left. So now we're going to wrap the yarn around a hook 8 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So when it's 8 times in US terminology, it's 1 behind the UK, so it's a septuple treble. But in UK terminology, it's called an octuple treble, obviously oct representing the Latin for the unit of 8. So same thing again. Let's find our next chain. And it follows the same format. You just pull through 2 until you get to the end. So it starts taking longer this time. So if you find any crochet patterns out there that use these really long stitches, they're quite popular in old English crochet patterns, but they're seen a lot less these days, and it's a shame. I think maybe I'll have to design something with super long stitches. But then of course we then wrap the yarn around a hook 9 times, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. And in US terminology, this is obviously 1 behind the UK, it's called an octuple treble. But in UK terminology, it's called a nonuple treble. So nonuple obviously representing the unit of 9. So in US an octuple, and in UK a nonuple. So I hope my pronunciation is correct with these Latin names. But same format, we just yarn over and pull through 2 till we get to the end. I'm certainly yarning over a lot of times now. So this is where it really does start feeling like Tunisian crochet. And Tunisian crochet is very, very similar, but obviously you're connecting these stitches, these yarning over and putting through 2 to the fabric below. So it creates obviously a proper fabric piece, but these are individual tall stitches. And then of course we're at the end, number 10. So wrap the yarn around your hook 10 times, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So this is getting very, very tall. In US terminology, this is a nonuple treble, so it's that 1 behind. But in UK terminology, it's called a decuple treble or decuple treble. Obviously, des representing the Latin number unit for 10. So, and it's exactly the same format. So there we go, we just pull through 2 until we get to the end. So let's see if I can do this with the yarn overs of 10. So I hope this little sort of quick tutorial has answered some questions about what the names are for some of the larger stitches. So that is probably why the fact that when you yarn over 10 times in UK terminology is called a decuple treble, the unit of 10, is probably why they skipped naming that first one a single crochet, because adding in that single crochet name in US terminology has meant that this, by the time you yarn over 10 times, they're only calling it a nonuple treble. So it's like the unit of 9 plus 1. So that could be one reason why the naming convention is different, but I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. And did you know that if you yarned over 1,000 times, could you even believe that's possible, it would be called a Quintuple Treble, but I don't think that I'm quite ready to be yarning over 1,000 times, but it just follows the Latin naming convention. And I will see you soon for some more crochet fun. Thanks for watching, and yeah, bye!